Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Podcast 34, and I'm delighted to welcome our first celebrity. You may have seen him on the TV, Mr. Peter Bleksey.
Celebrity, I'm not quite sure about, but anyway, I'll take it. Thank you.
So you spent many years in the Met Police, is that correct?
Yes, I did. But I'll start at the beginning, if I may, shall I?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, I was born in 1959. I'm that old. Okay. Into a marriage that essentially was a miserable one. My mum and dad's marriage was pretty ghastly because my dad had returned home from the Second World War, and I only discovered this fairly recently. When I say recently, 25 years ago when I reconnected with him.
Yeah.
And having been in the Navy for 7 years and being continually bombed by the Luftwaffe, okay, wheresoever he served, you know, it kind of coming back to the ambitious life that my mum wanted in suburban London, you know, with a 3-bed semi and a garden and a car on the drive and all that sort of stuff, and a couple of kids, didn't really work for my dad. He was still, I think, so kind of traumatised and affected by what he'd been through in the war, which included being blown up on ships and all manner of unpleasantness, that a semi-detached life was not for him. Now, I'm not giving him excuses because some of his behaviour was utterly unforgivable. He's not with us any longer. He died a few years ago. And the misery that he imposed upon my mother, my sister and me was appalling and very, very difficult to forgive, although I came to understand it. So he drank, very rarely came home, womanised, and just gave us all a miserable life at home until he left, which was when I was about 10 years old.
Okay.
And to be perfectly frank, it was kind of good riddance to bad rubbish when he buggered off.
Yeah.
You know, none of us shed any tears over him going.
Relief.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Apart from, of course, that left my mum as a single mum with not a penny to her name, and a lot of financial difficulty. My mum quite brilliantly went out to work, became a civil servant, worked very hard, got a couple of promotions during her career, but we had to sell the house, couldn't afford that.
Yeah.
Moved into a flat in Bleksey, which again, London suburb.
Yeah.
My sister, as soon as she could, went off to pursue a nursing career, left me and mum in the flat for a couple of years. I have to say that I flunked my education, which is a matter of considerable regret to this day, because as my wife and I have tried to instill into our kids, the importance of education. It really is important. Now, not everybody can be academic, and I would in no way, shape or form have been academic. I'm not that academically bright. I wouldn't have gone to university in the 70s, for example, when I would have been eligible to it, because I just wasn't part of that intellectual elite that went to uni in those days.
Yeah.
But if I'd got my head down, if I'd worked a bit harder, if I'd got a few more exams, if I'd kind of paid attention, instead of being the class clown and charking about all the time, I think it might have made things a bit easier in later life. But anyway, that's kind of a little bit by the by. So I left school at 16. School were very happy to see the back of me because I'd been a nuisance.
Troublesome.
You know, I had been a fool, been a nuisance. They were pleased to see the back of me. I was very pleased to go. And on my last day at school, I'm 16, we've gone down a pub, right? Yeah. Me and my other mates that are leaving school at 16, we've gone down a pub at lunchtime. Things were quite lax in the pub that we went to, as you can imagine. We got absolutely battered, probably on 3 or 4 pints. That's all it took at 16, you know? And went back into school, where we ripped each other's uniforms up, we wrote all over them, there was flour bombs, there was eggs, there was all sorts of chaos going off, which I was loving, until it came to the point where the deputy headmaster, who absolutely loathed me, right, it was a guy called Mason, I'll never get his face, nor his name to this day. He came up to me And there I am, I'm an absolute mess. I'm drenched, eggs out the lot, all that, and half pissed. Then he said, Bleksey, he said, you came to this school with nothing. He said, you leave here with next to nothing, because I didn't have a lot of exams, whatever. He said, you are nothing and you will become nothing.
Wow.
Get out my school. And that's verbatim.
Yeah.
And I went, all right, ta-da, and off I trotted. Back down to the pub. So
for another one.
Yeah. So there I was, left school. It was the summer of 1976, and I'm sorry if this sounds like a history lesson, but it was one of the most amazing summers ever, weather-wise. It was absolutely glorious all summer. So I went fishing, because I loved fishing, and I played cricket for my local cricket club, because I loved playing cricket, and I did that all summer, until round about sort of September time or so, and my mum said, are you actually going to get a job? Are you actually going to earn some money and what have you? I thought, yeah, okay, right, you're right, Mum. So I trotted down to what was then the job centre.
Yeah.
And there it was on the wall, warehouseman in a store called Woolworths, which in those days, very famous on every high street. Every high street had a Woolworths.
I worked in one as well.
Did you
believe it
really?
or not, yeah.
And it sold everything, didn't it? From sweets to cheese to clothes to records
Well,
to...
even I bought my first CD in Woolworths.
Boom.
So there you go. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So, and I got this job. Went for an interview, got it. It was that easy in those days. No uploading your CV. There was no blooming internet.
You could just walk in and...
Walk in, sit down, have a chat, and show your certificates from school. And I scrambled 3 or 4 what were called O levels in those days. I had a basic maths and English, which really helped. Got the job. And so rocked up a couple of days later, and there I am. There was just 2 of us in the warehouse, me and a fella who must have been in his 30s, family man, worked very hard, lovely fella, great guy to work for. I'd have done anything for him, and I did. I just loved it.
True mark of leadership.
Yeah, exactly. And it was physical. It was all unloading lorries and sticking boxes on shelves and all that kind of stuff, and I just loved it. And then it was taking stuff down to essentially, predominantly, the women working on the shop floor. I'd be carrying down 40-pound lumps of cheese for the lady on the deli, and all that stuff. And I had such a great relationship with all these people in the store. We got on famously, worked very hard. There was overtime. Want to work Saturday morning overtime? That kind of thing. God, not half, put me down for that, a few more quid. And at the end of the week, I'd get a brown envelope with my wages in it, and it was like, wow, this is like proper money. And in those days, I'm talking 1976, I was earning 30-something quid a week, which back in those days for me was money beyond my wildest imagination. Gave my mum a few quid, obviously, and it still gave me enough money to go fishing and, very importantly, get the Queen's Park Rangers, right? My beloved football team that I still go and watch.
You might have been in the same stand as my dad.
Quite possibly.
You never know.
Singing the same rude songs and misbehaving alongside each other. Quite possible. Quite possible. And I kind of really, really enjoyed it. And that was all going on fine until one night, one afternoon, late afternoon, sort of tea time, which I came home from work. And what had happened was that my mum had loftier ambitions for me than working as a warehouseman in Woolworths. And I thank her for that. That's no bad thing. But she hadn't warned me about what was about to happen. So I walk into the lounge of the flat that we share in Bleksey Heath. And let's just say I had got myself involved at times in silliness. Ridiculous petty crime and all that kind of stuff. And I walk into the lounge, and there, to my horror, is an enormous great police officer in full uniform sitting there with his helmet on the table next to him. And he was a giant of a bloke. And I was thinking, what the fuck am I going to get nicked for here? Like, you know what I mean?
You're sort of going back in your brain thinking,
what have I done recently?
You weren't casting your mind back to school again with the flower bombs.
You know, it was like, ugh. Anyway, and my amazing mum, who is still with us, astonishingly, at 96, love her, she'd got this local cop, and he was the old school local Bobby, to come round and try and talk me into joining the police, but as a cadet, because I was only 16 at the time.
Yeah.
And this guy did an astonishing job on me. He told me about the benefits of being in police, the excitement of it, the variation, things that all apply today.
Yeah.
And he really, really sold the idea to me of joining the police cadets, which was a forerunner to then becoming a PC when you were 18 and a half and all of that. Did an astonishing job, very smartly, of course. Once he's got me engaged in conversation and he's asking me about what bands I like, you know, what pop groups I like and this, that and the other, and what my interests are and this, that and the other. And he says, got any posters? Right, I'm 16. Yeah, of course I've got posters. He said, come on in, show them to me. And that was just his way of blagging himself into my bedroom, right? You know, very, pretty, very clever, I think.
Yeah.
Just so we can have a little look, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, have I got some freaking communist flag hanging on the wall, you know what I mean, or something, you know, Vive la Revolution, you know, Che Guevara and a spliff in the ashtray, you know, was there any of that going on, which there wasn't, but he just had a little look round and a chat and all of that, and before he left, he pulled out the forms to join the police cadets, and I filled them out.
There and then,
Stuck them in the post the following day. Again, life was simpler, application processes were simpler, thankfully, back then. But then, fairly rapidly thereafter, I went for interviews, medicals, all of that. And in the January of the following year, just after my 17th birthday, I walked through the gates of Hendon Cadet College, which was all part of the huge estate that the Met Police used to have for its training back in those days. Subsequently, most of it all sold off. Don't get me started on that.
there's a surprise.
Yeah, indeed, and people wonder why the Met Police and British policing is going down a Swanee. And I walked through those gates with a haircut that I thought was short enough. I very quickly found out it wasn't, so they send you off to the barbers to get enough and all of that. And I walked into a world that I very quickly embraced and loved.
Yeah.
It was a world of discipline.
Yeah.
And of course, discipline was what was missing at school. You know, I'd been very disrespectful to teachers, a matter for which I apologise and have enormous regret. I was just a stupid, immature little kid at school.
Yeah. Well, no male figure.
Exactly. Boom, you've nailed it. Thank you so much. Yeah, without a doubt. You know, nobody ever really taught me how to be a man.
Yeah.
And then, go to Hendon. The discipline was strictly applied, but you could have a laugh as well. You know, there was so much physical fitness work as well, which I just got into and really embraced. Lost a lot of weight, got much fitter, loved all the sport. There was the studying as well. I actually picked up another couple of O-levels at the school as well.
Yeah, that's good.
Which was no bad thing. And you studied a bit of police work too. Did that for a year at Hendon. Absolutely loved it. Did get into a couple of scrapes and a bit of trouble, you know, because there was, you know, I didn't become fully compliant, shall we say, you know. And in those days, in the cadets, they had what they called defaulters. So if you misbehaved, did something wrong, say your uniform was shit, you'd been a bit disrespectful, a prefect or a vice house captain or this, that and the other, or a member of staff, heaven forbid, or if you'd done something stupid during a representative sports match, got yourself sent off or something like that, brought the cadet school into disrepute, all those kind of things. A number of misdemeanours you could do. You would be put on defaulters. And that could be for a day, for a week, for a weekend. The worst sanction was 28 days defaulters. If you got 28 days defaulters, you were as close as you were to getting a sack. After that, it was a sack. I never got 28 days defaulters, but I did get defaulters weekend, which was a real pain. You can't leave the cadet school. You have to wear your cadet uniform all weekend. When the tannoy goes off, you can get called to do jobs and chores and tidy up the canteen and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, it was a bit of a pain, but it was your punishment. Anyway, one such Saturday, I'm on defaulters weekend, and I've got my ticket to watch Rangers, right? and it's a huge game.
Yeah.
And I've worked out that if I leave Hendon at 1:30, I reckon I can be back by 5. And on the balances of probability, a defaulters parade being called between 1:30 and say 5:30 was negligible. I'd have to be really, really unlucky. So I thought I could get away with it. So I, get into the dorm, offer me get on with my civvy clothes, climb over the wall, down to the tube station in Colindale, go to watch Rangers. Yes, we won. Go on, you ours. Right, sneak back in. And when I get back into the dormitory, one of my colleagues goes, "You are so in the shit." Right. Oh no, they said, yeah. 3:30, they called a defaulters parade.
You couldn't make it
And
up.
of course you weren't there.
Yeah.
Right? So that was it. I got another week's defaulters on top of that. But anyway, it was worth it to get the Rangers. But so yeah, roundly I embraced it all, loved it. Then I spent 6 months as a cadet at a police station in South London, in Norbury. Learnt an awful lot, made a lot of tea because you're the cadet, so you make you get the kettle on, all that stuff, know your place, fair enough, no gripes with that. Did it, enjoyed it. Then at the age of 18 and a half, back up to Hendon to get sworn in as a PC, go through your PC training, all that, and which I did. And to think that
was the training easier, do you reckon, because you've been through Hendon as a cadet?
As a cadet, we had a head start.
Yeah.
We definitely had a head start on those who hadn't.
Yeah.
Those who were coming
Yeah.
straight in off of Civvy Street.
Yeah.
We definitely had a head start. We knew how to bull our boots, you know what I mean? We
Yeah.
knew how to iron our uniforms. We had a reasonable knowledge of some of the policing law.
Yeah.
Some of us had experience. We'd been out there on the streets and done a bit of policing and watched how it was done. So yeah, we definitely had a head start on somebody that had come straight from Civvy Street. But I went from that kid who was, the school were glad to see the back of. I ended up being the top student of our entire intake, which was some hundreds of cops,
Blimey.
and I won a book prize as a result of it and all of that. So the transformation in a couple of years had been pretty dramatic.
So you really proved them all wrong at school.
I grew up. I grew up.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
I don't blame school for
No.
it.
Yeah.
I grew up.
Yeah, and it was good the discipline was there at Hendon as well, and this is what I think things are lacking a lot of these days. It's the discipline, and with you being in Hendon and going through what you went through and the discipline factor of it, I think really paid off in the end, didn't it?
Discipline's become a dirty word.
Yeah, it has. This is the
People
problem.
are afraid to use it.
Yeah.
I mean, even talking to my amazing wife the other day, our kids have grown up and they're not at home. But I was saying to Sarah, we disciplined our kids, and we did. But Sarah balks a little bit at the mere mention of the word, and she said, "Well, they had boundaries."
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're splitting hairs
It's
here.
just a
darling.
different terminology.
Yeah.
But because discipline has become such a kind of a word that people are afraid of, but I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Discipline's so important. It's what
it
makes
is.
you get up when your alarm goes off.
Yeah, it does.
It's what makes you make yourself presentable when you go to work or when
Yeah.
you go up to study or whatever it is you're going to do. It's what makes you perform well,
Yeah.
whatever it is you're doing. Self-discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so important. And I think a lot of people, a lot of young people and older people would do very well to have a bit of discipline instilled into their
I'm a
lives.
big fan of cadet programs, whether it's Sea Cadets, Army Cadets, Air Cadets, St John's Cadets, Police Cadets, Fire Cadets, Scouts, whatever it is, because I think that gives, not only does it give extra curriculum, and I was lucky enough to do some really cool things as a child, going on warships as a 13, 14-year-old boy, but it gave me that discipline. All right, my home life was fine, but I came from like a rough background. I was adopted quite quickly, but that Sea Cadets gave me that extra discipline I needed as a child, and I think there's a lot to be said for organisations like that even now.
Completely agree.
Yeah. No, definite.
Yeah. So, passed out of Hendon, got posted to Peckham in South East London. Well, if I thought I was a bit of a Jack the Lad coming from Bleksey East, right? When I got to Peckham, I realised what a marshmallow I was. You know what I mean? Came up against some properly tough people, whether they be criminals or police officers. It was a great place to work. It really was. You learned how to police very, very quickly. It was far from perfect, believe you me. Peckham had a huge Afro-Caribbean population, which was generally, now we're talking about late 70s. So it was the parents that had come over in the Windrush. It was their kids who were growing up. And there was astonishing levels of repulsive racism around, both in the police and outside of it. And policing was imposed upon these communities. It wasn't by consent.
No.
It was like, know your place, get back in your box and that kind of stuff. And of course, it was all destined to end very, very badly, which it did in 1981 with the Brixton riots, which at that time were the worst riots ever seen in mainland Britain. And I was there that weekend because Peckham bordered Brixton.
So you had the overspill, I'm guessing.
Well, I was on a roving unit at the time in April 1981. It's called a divisional crime team or something, and we were a dozen cops in the back of a mobile, kind of transporter thing, and we had a free rein to go wherever we needed to on our patch to sort out local crime issues. And a call came out that Friday afternoon: urgent assistance required in Brixton. Well, we were in Camberwell, only a mile down the road. We were one of the first on scene as it was all beginning to boil over. And stayed there the Friday and the Saturday, and it was horrendous. I mean, on the Saturday in particular, Brixton burned. Hundreds of people wanted to kill us. And many of them had just cause for that. Not to kill us, but to be very angry with the police because so many young black men had been fitted up, beaten up, treated appallingly and all of that. And you can only do that to a population for a certain amount of time before a gasket's going to blow. And that's exactly what happened. But unfortunately, to see Brixton burn like it did and the violence and all of that, which I'm not justifying, I'm just explaining why they did what they did, was grim, and it left a real mark on me because I was still in uniform. So I'd been in uniform about 3.5 years. And when I got home from Brixton on the Saturday night, and I kind of looked myself in the mirror and I went, I've got to get out of this uniform, because people wanted to kill me because of what the uniform represented. The oppression and the beating up and the fabricating evidence and all of that, which was pretty widespread within policing at the time. That uniform represented that, and that's why people wanted to kill us with petrol bombs and bricks and everything else they could lay their hands on. So I thought, nah, sod that. I'd been approached beforehand about the potential of becoming a detective or trying to become a detective, and I just went after that. I went, no, I'm going to get out of uniform and try and become a detective. So did I kind of take the cowardly way out? You could accuse me of that, I suppose, and there might be a case for that, but I just thought, no, if that's what that cloth means to so many people, I can't be doing with it. And made the decision to try and become a detective. And I was very successful in that. 6 months later, I was passed my selection board and all of that. Worked very hard for it, studied a lot, all of that, and then got posted in my shiny new suit at the age of 22 to the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, which was rather different from Peckham. Rather different. The clientele was it was, and we literally dealt with lords and ladies and people that had lots of money, as well as there was a bit of a divide when you crossed the Cromwell Road and went into Earl's Court. There was social deprivation. There was lots of all manner of things that went on there. But it was a very different place to police. I learnt a lot of new skills, and by and large, had a great time.
I imagine there was a lot of burglaries, was it, in that sort of area, burglaries and thefts?
High value burglaries.
In
fact, on one occasion, Roger Moore, the former James Bond, was staying in a very swanky apartment in Kensington whilst a Bond film was being film that he was in. So he was travelling from there every day to the studios, wheresoever it was, to film whatever Bond movie it was. I can't remember which one it was. And in the morning, so one morning I come in, and you always used to get in early. If you're on early turn, you get in early, so you can see what crimes have come in the book overnight, and you can allocate them to yourself, so you get the better crimes, the more interesting ones to investigate. You know what I mean? Leave the other rubbish ones to the lazy bastards who don't get in on time. You know?
Sounds fair to me.
Exactly. So anyway, there's this burglary of Roger Moore's apartment. Him and his wife are the victims, and this, that, and the other. Jewellery stolen, etc., etc. And I thought, right, I'll have a bit of that. You know, and I was unashamedly hoping to meet Roger Moore.
Yeah,
you know,
don't blame
James
you.
Bond, I was sorry for that one. You know? Anyway, I get my mate, and later off that morning, we've made an appointment to go and visit the victim, and we go in, speak to concierge in the lift up to the apartment, open the door, so it's me and my mate. Door opens, and it's Roger Moore's wife at the time, and straight-faced, okay, she turns around to me and she goes, "Are you Mr. Bond?"
Are you Mr. I think you had to think if that was your surname.
I think, is she taking a piss here? That's what I thought, right? Okay. I said,
Oh dear.
I said, "I beg your pardon?" She said, "Are you Mr. Bond?" I said, "No, I'm Detective Constable Bleksey, the officer that's going to investigate this crime." And she said, "Oh, we were expecting Mr. Bond." I'm thinking she's either mad, right, or she's just taking a piss out of me and my mate. Anyway, we kind of look at each other. Hello, we go in, you know, all polite and this, that, and the other. It turns out that the PC that originally reported the crime was called PC Stephen Bond.
Oh, you could make it up, could you?
Yeah. And so she was expecting PC Bond to turn up. But no, she got Bleksey instead. To my deep regret, we never solved that crime. Must have been an inside job of some description, I'm sure. But apparently, Roger Moore was really cheesed off when he got home from filming to find out that the apartment had been burgled, but laughed his head off when he found out that PC Bond had recorded the details.
Unbelievable, isn't it? You can't make it up.
Yeah. So, had a great time at Kensington, really wild times. The early 80s, oh my word. We really, we worked hard, we played hard. That old cliche, but we did. And Kensington was quite some way from where I lived. And there were quite a few nights when, let's just say, I didn't get home. But we all had a very, very good time. Solved some very challenging crimes, including murder and rapes and all that sort of stuff. Worked astonishingly hard, but played remarkably hard as well. And then, as I was, in those days, you could generally be at one different posting for about 3 years or so. So when it was getting towards the time that I knew I'd be on the move, my next ambition then was to join one of the squads at Scotland Yard. So I could be a Scotland Yard detective, because of course that's where the resources was, the expertise, the kudos, the travel, and all that kind of stuff. And so I put out some feelers and was very fortunate to be accepted onto what then was called the Central Drug Squad, which was Scotland Yard's premier drugs fighting unit. It was tiny at the time, back in 1985 when I joined it.
So was that more like ecstasy around then times?
No, in 1985, this is before the ecstasy explosion, generally speaking, it was powder, heroin, cocaine, cannabis, some LSD, that kind of thing. But of course, in the run-up to that, so it was 85 when I went up there, by working at Kensington, because cocaine used to be essentially the drug of the music industry or the elites. They were the people that had access to it. They were the people that could afford it, because it was shockingly expensive. But interestingly, I saw the explosion of cocaine onto the streets of the UK through the 80s, from the mid 80s into, to these days where it's of absolute epidemic proportions. I kind of saw that, and we thought at the time we were on the side of the angels and we were fighting the good fight, the war on drugs and all of that. But of course, the war on drugs is a war that cannot and will not ever be won.
No.
And we basically, I look back now, all right, we had a great time, we had some astonishing successes, hundreds of people went to prison for thousands of years, but you know what? Has anything changed? Are there less drugs on the streets now? Are there less guns on the streets now? No.
No.
We were completely and utterly wasting our time.
Am I correct in remembering I watched you say that you shut down a large portion of the drugs industry in London and it was for about 18 minutes or something?
There are people that have said when there's huge seizures, which law enforcement are always very proud to show off, shout it from the rooftops. And like back in our day, this shows you the kind of how the industry has grown. In our day, we seized 33 kilos of cocaine, that had been smuggled in via Argentina in the arms of JCBs. It was welded into the big mechanical arms at the front of JCBs. When we seized that 33 kilos, it was the largest landslide seizure of cocaine in the UK. Right?
That's crazy.
Now, they seize it by the ton, by the multi-ton, because the industry has just grown and grown and grown and grown. And will continue to do so. Because it's a supply and demand industry, isn't it?
It sounds like it was quite a sophisticated setup in those days, wasn't it, for smuggling it in?
Yeah, but we were operating at the highest echelons of the criminal drugs industry. So we seized boats with the assistance of the Royal Navy and the SBS out on the high seas. We ran undercover operations with undercover detectives on boats, that would sail into British ports, and we'd then sneak out of the bushes, right? You're all nicked, hands up, armed police, you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff. Terrific police work.
Yeah.
But we were just, pardon my language, as history has proven, pissing in the wind.
Yeah.
It was just a waste of time.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
All we were taking part in was a job creation scheme. Because you take out one lot, as you allude to, and another lot fills the void.
Like whack-a-mole, isn't that?
Yeah. It's just like utterly pointless, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I had an uncomfortably close relationship with drugs at one point in my life. And I'm not an advocate of taking drugs in any way, shape or form. Believe you me, I am not. Because take cannabis, for example, right? The stoner, right? Okay. They get off their nut on whatever it is, and suddenly they think they understand modern jazz, right? Nobody understands modern jazz. It doesn't make any sense anyway, right? And then they have 4 boxes of Maltesers, right? And they bore the frigging pants off you, right? Okay, right? What I say to people who take drugs and advocate for taking the drugs and all of that is I say, right, okay. If you think taking drugs is a good idea, get your phone out, go to voice notes, right? And when you're sitting down with your stoned mates, right, and you're skinning up, right, and you're just about to build a big bifter and get stoned, press voice notes on your phone, set it aside and leave it there. All night if need be, right? Okay, go on now, you toke on that, eat your Maltesers or whatever it might be, right, and talk your shit. And then in the morning, or whenever it is that you get your sensibilities back, right? Rewind that. And then you tell me it was a good idea to take drugs. Because all you'll do is talk total, utter bollocks. Right? End of. Right? Likewise, cocaine, right? So go on in, hoover up those lines, I'll chop them all up for you, off you go. Hoover them up, right? And we all know people on cocaine, they think they are the most interesting person in the room. Don't they?
Talk your ear off.
And they cannot tell you enough about themselves. And they are the biggest snore-offs going. Again,
I've got a few
voice
people
notes.
in mind.
Voice notes. Go on in, record them. Or if not, stick it in your pocket and just stick it on record while they are boring the rear ends off you. and then play it the following day and go, there you go, mate, do you think you're really interesting now?
Yeah.
They always think they're the most interesting person in the room, when in fact they are the most tiresome.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop millions of people taking drugs,
No.
you know, as we know. So it's,
I guess for some people it's that escapism, isn't it? I'm not justifying it, but
No, it's not.
it's the very same reason why people drink.
yeah,
But
and I love a drink.
Yeah, but I don't think they realise the damage long term it does
I think
to
it's-
themselves and.
I think it's trouble is nowadays it's cut with a lot more bad things than how it
Yeah.
used to be. I think, and you know,
Right, you've tricked me into true life confessions now. right? Talking about cutting gear and all that kind of game. Shall I talk
yeah,
about this?
no,
Right.
that'd be great.
Okay. Just imagine if, right, back in the 80s, somebody was to buy a gram of cocaine, okay, it would cost about 50 quid,
Yeah.
possibly 60 quid.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you've got to remember in the 80s, I am buying undercover.
Yeah.
I'm buying kilos upon kilos upon kilos of this gear, and I'm all across it, and I was an expert in my field, and I
Yeah.
knew more about gear than you could shake the stick at. So just imagine, you buy a gram of gear, for example, just say I was off duty or wasn't Peter Bleksey or whatever, you'll get the drift here, you know what I'm saying, right? Somebody buys a gram of cocaine for 60 quid in the mid-1980s, okay? When you unwrap it, okay, it would lie beautifully. It would be proper Cremo gear. It would be creamy looking, right?
Yeah.
Off-white, proper gear. And I could guarantee you that gram of gear would be about 95% pure.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
No,
A gram of
it's
gear.
crazy, isn't it?
95% pure, right? Yeah. So you get on that. Imagine if it's your own gram, right? Yeah. You're not perhaps in the company that you're going to share it with, right? Yeah. I can tell you that on that kind of gear that was so good back in the 80s, right? You could have plenty of that gram that night, okay? You would have the time of your life. You would also, forgive me being awfully graphic here, right? You would get an hard-on like that, right? Okay? And consequently, you would have a very, very enjoyable evening, okay? Especially if you happen to be in the company of someone that you were very much attracted to, right? Okay? Then you pull your jeans on Saturday morning, stick your hand in your pocket and go, woohoo, I've got half of that gram left. Right? Seriously, right? And you would, and then you could go out and have another thoroughly enjoyable evening on the Saturday, if that's what you wanted to do, right? These days, people are buying an 8-ball, right? 3.5 grams of coke, for example, right? Yeah. The purity of it is absolute garbage.
Yeah.
Going back to all the cutting agents that are in it and all that, you might get purity as low as 15-20%.
Yeah.
Right? It's got so much shite in it that you don't get that. You get a chipolata, right? Okay? Right? You get an embarrassing chipolata that might not even work, right? Coupled with the fact that because you're hoovering up so much of this 3.5 grams, right? You're drinking about 1.5 gallons of Stella, right? Okay? And people think that's a good night out.
Yeah.
It's nothing like what a proper night out on proper gear used to be.
Keep going back, and get more,
Correct, and the dealer keeps getting richer and richer and richer.
And then I see people that are more worked up about trying to get a bag that don't enjoy their night. Because all they're doing is trying to get that bag, then that, like you say, runs out, and then 10 minutes later they're trying to get another one. So they're not enjoying their night. They're just
exactly.
But what I find is, from going back for us doing the doors at all the pubs and clubs, that because it's cut with so much crap, they get so aggressive. And you know, that's you know,
I mean, who would fill your frigging body with a horse track?
I know, it's like,
I mean, do me a favour.
It probably didn't do the horse any good. Like anyone else.
Exactly.
It's just really annoying because I don't want to go in details. I don't want people to know who she is. But I've got a friend of mine, and she's one of the smartest people I've ever met. Like, I think she would be Mensa smart, but every weekend she's on the cat, and it frustrates me really.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm thinking you could be Well, she's way intelligent than I am, and probably what you are and everyone else. But it's just that.
Well, that's not setting the bar too high, is it? That's free,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But I'll get your point.
But and that's the thing with drugs. It just I get people that do it recreationally, and I have no judgment on that. But it can turn into something.
And when the whole night,
Yeah.
as you said, revolves around getting that bit of gear.
Yeah.
Who's got the gear? Who's got the gear?
Yeah.
Get on the phone. When's he going to get it? When's he going to get it?
Yeah. Do you know what, I've seen more arguments now as well over drugs.
Yeah.
People have taken more than they should have done amongst friends than anything else.
And we're in Bognor Regis.
Yeah.
We're not in the Bronx.
No.
We're not in East London. Because it's everywhere.
Yeah, it
Gear
is.
is absolutely everywhere.
Yeah.
So I've got a bit of a solution to it.
Yeah.
I think, as much as I dislike drugs and I really don't encourage people to take them, I think, and I hope this will happen in your lifetimes. It's probably not going to happen in my lifetime, but I think the entire illegal drugs industry should be legalised and regulated.
Yeah.
Don't please ever use the word legalised without using the word regulated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the illegal drugs industry is the fourth biggest industry in the world.
Yeah.
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 They tried it in Portugal, didn't they? And with
Piecemeal, with certain success, and of course in certain American states they've decriminalised cannabis, and so it's sold commercially and all of that. The trouble is, wheresoever it's been done, it's not been done across the board.
No.
Yeah.
With a very strong political will and with the vision of it that I have.
Yeah.
So consequently, people for and against the argument can use the data to back their case up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's a bit of a mixed landscape.
Yeah.
But I would like to see, through intergovernmental agreements,
Yeah.
the entire illegal drugs industry legalised and regulated so that it became, in essence, because I could talk about it for hours, like alcohol, cigarettes, paracetamol. You could go to a drugstore and buy it together with the advice, the warnings, you'd know exactly what was in it and all of that. But you imagine the political will it would take to wrestle the fourth biggest industry in the world from the vice-like grip of organised crime.
Yeah.
It does make sense what you've just said, 100%.
But it would take huge political will.
Yeah, it would.
Huge political will. But it would reduce so much harm.
Yeah.
So much harm. The prison population, the billions upon billions upon billions that would be raised in revenue that governments could use for education programs. I mean, if we look at cigarettes, for example, right? Cigarette smoking, thankfully, is on the decline. Right? And my kids had cigarette smoking taught out of them when they went to primary school. You can do the same with drugs. You really can. It won't be a smooth road. It will be very challenging and many bumps along the way. But with a huge political will, intergovernmental agreements, I think it could actually be achieved, and I think it will in your lifetime.
Well, like you say, it removes the harm. And it's not just the drug dealers, it's removing all the street gangs, all the street violence. You know, people, it was like the other week when that poor woman got shot, she had nothing to do with it. My mistaken identity, which, you know, you obviously, your line of work, you've probably seen quite a lot. All that, or 90% of that, will just get removed.
And so when your pals are getting the ump about, you know, who's runging, when's it arriving, this, that and the other, well, actually, you can walk over the road and buy it from the licensed outlet. And you know what the purity is, where it originates from, what it's going to do to you. You get advice on it. And you're not buying it in a gloomy pub car park off a bloke who might have a knife or a 9mm down his back pocket.
Exactly. Who's probably on it himself, who's paranoid and
wants you to take more and more and more and more addictive and more harmful.
And then it's that vicious circle, like you say.
Exactly. And because the demand's not going away, and I understand why people take drugs. To alter your mind is the most natural thing in the world. It's why we've just had a cup of coffee.
Exactly.
Have a little lift up. It's why some people have sugar in their tea.
Well, it's nothing new, is it? You know, like coffee's been around since the Arabic.
But it's why people read a book.
Yeah.
It's why people watch a film.
Yeah.
It's why people turn the telly on, because we're all looking to alter our mental state.
Yeah, definitely.
It's what people do. It's what being human is.
Escapism, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, it's like why people have a bit of chocolate.
Yeah.
All that nice little lift.
Yeah.
Like a donut.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whether it is reading a book, watching Netflix, you do it to alter your mental state. That's what you do it for.
Yeah.
That's why people take drugs. It's a very natural human thing to do. But we let it run rampant in a completely uncontrolled way, which is overseen, run in the grip of gangsters.
Yeah, it is.
What's the sense of that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, there's fake glamour of gangsters I've seen, where there seems to be a good life because they've got wads of cash and stuff like that. But it's like I say to people, you're looking over your shoulder because either the police ain't going to get you, it will be the next drug gang that wants to come into your turf. So you're never going to be satisfied. We're never going to be enjoying the money.
Thank you very much for saying that, because let me tell you, obviously I've been around the block a few times, and this is a large part of what I used to do and still comment on. There are not very many happily ever after stories in organised crime.
No.
Right? And drug dealing.
No.
There really ain't. There are very, 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 very few drug dealers that end up happily wearing their slippers and bouncing their grandchildren on their knee. It don't happen.
No.
Yeah.
It's either death, jail, or quite possibly both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a mug's game.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's definitely nothing not worth getting into.
No.
Indeed.
So obviously you've done a lot of work undercover.
Yeah.
What would be, there's a couple of questions really, your most scariest moment undercover and your funniest moment undercover?
I bet you got loads of both.
Well, I did work undercover for about 10 years.
Yeah.
So there was a large number of operations. But as for the terrifying ones, they were virtually all terrifying, really, because there's that constant threat of blowing your cover or your cover being blown.
Yeah.
So you always had to be absolutely kind of like on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes that was challenging because you'd be sitting around with people, drug dealers, who used to work on the theory that undercover cops wouldn't take drugs.
Yeah.
Now, undercover cops shouldn't take drugs because when you're negotiating with these people, believe you me, you want to be double on it.
Yeah.
Because it's negotiation skills and trying to persuade people to do a deal this way or that way and not the way they want to do it and all of that kind of thing. But occasionally, it would get to the point where, and I would only do this if it was an absolute deal breaker and the operation was of sufficient size and importance to make it absolutely necessary, that I might have a bang on a joint in the company of bad people. But you see, I had tactics in mind for minimising that. I was very adept at putting a joint together. I could do you a 3 skin, a 5 skin, a 7 skin. I could do you a bifter like a baby's arm, right? Because that was my job. I was undercover, so I would practice literally. On weekends at home, I would practice with oxo cubes, right, and tobacco, making joints. So I was like bang on it. And likewise with cutting lines. One little party piece of mine was to be able to create lines in the letters of the alphabet.
Yeah.
So I would sit down with a gangster and say, "Oh, so what's your name?" If they're wrecking up lines, because a lot of time I could do that, and then I didn't have to partake.
Yeah.
Because they'd be like, "Oh well, nobody's ever made me a line shaped like a J before."
Yeah.
And you go, "Well, there you are. There's your line." I go, "Oh, love it," And they completely forget that they actually got the gear out because they wanted you to take some. They'd forget. So if I'm there and I'm thinking I've really got to smoke this joint just to get this deal over the line, then as I build the joint, I'd say, "Yeah, well, I'm making it. I'll make the joint, blah 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 blah." Put it together. What I would do was backload the joint. So at the front of the joint, I'd just put tobacco.
Yeah.
And I'd put the cannabis towards the back of it, right? Okay, without them watching, because a bit of sleight of hand, you know what I mean. Excuse me. And then I go, "Well, I've built it, so I'll spark it."
Yeah.
I spark it up, light the joint, smoke the front bit of it, and that's where I've not put the gear.
Yeah.
So I'm absolutely minimising the effects of the cannabis will have on me.
So
you know?
clever.
And there you go.
And you're doing
There
that
you go, bud.
with them sitting there.
Yeah, exactly. And they're talking about other shit, and you're distracting them. And go, look at that, you know, and all that game. So because you really didn't want to be off your nut when you're in the company of these villains.
No.
Terrifying ones, just about all of them. You know, getting stabbed in the neck was pretty unpleasant. That was when I was supporting an undercover operation as part of the attack team. The hit had gone down, the drugs had been seized. One of the bad guys nicked. We'd kept a flat under observation, and it was a new detective inspector that I was helping out on this job. I said, we've got to go and search those premises now. Now, Governor, now. And he was like, oh, just wait. Excuse me. I said, we can't wait. We got to know. Anyway, we did wait. And of course, what was happening in that flat was there was a very, very nervous fellow drug dealer who'd expected his colleague to come back with a big bag full of cash, and he hadn't. And we go up to try and suss the door out as to how we can get in, whether we need a, you know, sledgehammer or we can kick it in, or we've got to get specialist kit and this, that and the other. And whilst I'm there, door flies open, I'm there, telling my old Bill, and he literally just goes vroomf and stabs me over arm like that. And I kind of half got out of the way, swung him over some railings, held him there, and I've got his wrist and the knife is in his hand and it's got blood on the end of it. I'm thinking, that's my blood.
Yeah.
This is not good. Colleagues came and took him, and I'm bleeding from the neck, and you know, the ambulance was called and all that, rushed to hospital. But fortunately, it was only a flesh wound.
Oh, thank God for that.
And nothing more serious than that. Excuse me. So that was particularly unpleasant. Many other occasions when you'd get slammed up against the wall and strip searched and all that in case they thought you were undercover old Bill, were you wearing a wire, all that kind of game. On one such occasion, these freaking blokes are really giving me the arse ache because they're double paranoid and they're talking about whether, you know, I'm undercover old Bill. We're in a pub in the heart of the East End, right gloomy, grotty kind of pub. And what I always did when I sat down at pubs or tables with people is I would check to see whether the table would move. When they're at the bar or when they're in the bog or this, that and the other, you know, is it a loose standing table, unlike this, which is of course nailed to the ground. So there I am, and they're going on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And in the end, I stood up because I just about had the fucking ache with it. Right, stood up at the table, I just flipped the table over. Right, beer glasses everywhere, smashing glass, all that kind of stuff, booze. And I walked out of the pub because I was fed up with them keep accusing me of there being a possibility that I was undercover old Bill. So as I storm out of the pub, of course, what happens next? They come running after me. Really sorry, mate, didn't mean to insult you. Please come back in, we can get this deal done. And thereafter that, I had a meeting out the palm of my hand. 2 days later, they're all on their way to prison.
Clever tactics, isn't it?
Very
clever.
You had to vary your tactics all the time. You had to always think about it and come up with something fresh and different. Because the villains knew. You know, that's why I was very fortunate to be allowed to do so much innovation in undercover policing. Because beforehand, it had been done in a very kind of fixed way. Undercover cops invariably would drape themselves in jewellery that they borrowed from a friendly jeweller in Hatton Garden, and would sit in a 5-star hotel bar and would refuse to move from there to negotiate or buy the drugs or this, that and the other. And that worked for a few years. But by the time I started getting into that world, the villains had sussed all that out. And we're listening to phone taps, and villains are going to each other, if he invites you to a bar in a 5-star hotel, don't go, it's undercover old Bill.
They
knew. Excuse me. So we had to innovate. And I was very fortunate that when bosses allowed me to innovate, we'd be successful. So it was continually evolving. But as I say, back to what I said not so long ago, it was all just a waste of time. Because look at the industry now. Less drugs on the streets? No. Less guns on the streets? No. Ladies and gentlemen, safe to say my entire career was a waste of frigging time.
Oh, it's crazy, isn't it?
What do you think has changed in policing, good and bad, from when you were first joined to detective to now? And
Good, it's a lot less racist.
yeah,
And one of the really good things to come out of the Brixton riots was a report by a lord called Lord Scarman, and his report led to, essentially, in 1984, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act being passed.
Yeah.
And that put in a lot of rights for arrested people,
Yeah.
which put paid to a lot of the corrupt behaviour. Very, very good.
yeah,
Very good. A lot less racist than it used to be. Far from perfect. And as for bad, where do I begin?
Huh.
Now, I'm not one of those people that goes, back in my day it was all brilliant, because it wasn't.
yeah,
I've talked about the racism, the brutality, the
Yeah.
fitting people up and all that kind of shit. And it was dreadful. I've spoken at length about that. But there was a lot that was better. Of course, society's changed though.
yeah,
So policing has tried to change with it. And unfortunately, I think societal change has driven some unnecessary changes in policing.
yeah,
The big thing that concerns me is that for the last couple of decades now, policing is in the grip of academia. If you look at universities, the length and breadth of the country, they've got policing departments.
yeah,
They deliver policing degrees,
Yeah.
master's degrees. Excuse me. You have people working in these university police departments that are doctors of policing, professors of policing,
Yeah.
and the most risky thing they've ever done in their lives is get a paper cut, right? It really is in the grip of academia, and that is because all those who occupy the senior ranks of policing now think of themselves as academics.
Yeah.
They've all been at universities. They've all got letters after their names and their masters or their master's degrees. Some have got doctorates themselves. They are utterly absorbed and gripped by the world of academia. And do you know what? An awful lot of policing can't be found in books.
yeah,
It's found on the streets.
Yeah.
yeah,
But experience and leadership qualities are not what's valued in policing these days. If you want to climb that greasy pole of promotion, you've got to say the right thing. You've got to comply with the right way of thinking.
Yeah.
Dissenting voices are not encouraged.
yeah,
And consequently, senior policing is an echo chamber
yeah,
where the senior cops are told what they want to hear as opposed to what they need to hear.
yeah,
And this is not going to change until we have wholesale police reform. Policing fails the public in so many regards. There's brilliant men and women out there doing a wonderful job, but policing has become a social service and not a police service.
We had this discussion the other day.
Yeah,
didn't
we did exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
About
it, now,
this.
it deals with society's ills
Yeah.
Yeah.
rather than sticking to what it should do,
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is crime and criminals, keeping the streets safe, investigating crime, preventing crime, locking bad people up.
Yeah.
yeah,
Go back to Sir Robert Peel's 9 policing principles that were written in 1829. You can find them easily online. Just go Robert Peel's policing principles or the Peelian principles of policing. Easy to find.
Yeah.
They are still as apposite and relevant to policing today as they were nearly 200 years ago when he wrote them.
yeah,
But all these academics in policing, all these senior officers who got as far away from the rough and tumble of frontline policing as quickly as they bloody well could, because it was all a bit beneath them and they didn't like it, right? They wanted to read more books, climb that pole,
Yeah.
spout more bollocks,
yeah,
right? Robert Peel's principles. Get back in touch with those. They're
Yeah.
very apposite and relevant. But it's not going to happen
no,
No.
because policing's in the state it is. But I say to any of these senior police officers, so is policing better? Are the public getting a better service because of what you've turned it into? No, they're not.
Yeah.
Generations of senior police have failed the public. They've turned it into a social service that deals with all of society's ills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a breakdown service for society. You know, your car breaks down, you ring the AA, the RAC, Green Flag or whatever else it is.
Yeah.
Society has any form of breakdown now,
Yeah.
which is not related to crime or policing. They ring the police, and the police are stupid enough to turn up.
Yeah.
That's what senior police have turned it into.
Yeah.
They're doing nonsense.
Yeah.
Some are trying to shift it, the mental health stuff, they're
Yeah.
trying to move that on another, but they should never have allowed it to get it to that state in the first place.
Yeah.
What do you think about when they introduce crime commissioners into the police forces?
I wrote a play for the BBC about that. And it was called And the Beat Goes On. I've written 3 plays for Radio 4, BBC Sounds, over the years. And I was opposed to it. I was opposed to police and crime commissioners because, of course, the overwhelming majority of them are attached to the main political parties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is very much the politicisation of policing.
Yeah.
And that's not a good thing, right? It's inevitable and it's very difficult to escape. But I'm afraid it's what we have. And if you look at London, for example, where the Mayor of London is also the Police and Crime Commissioner,
Yeah.
they have responsibilities for policing. We've seen Boris Johnson get rid of Sir Ian Blair, who was the Commissioner.
Yeah.
We've seen Sadiq Khan get rid of Cressida Dick.
So what's your opinion on her? Do you think she was scapegoated? Do you think she was treated unfairly? Or do you think she fell on her own sword?
Cressida Dick said, "It's all wonderful, nothing to see here, move along,"
Yeah.
which was fundamentally stupid.
Yeah.
Consequently, the police officers loved her
Right, okay.
because she supported them all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she was masking the truth.
Yeah.
She wasn't telling the truth. And on her watch, Wayne Couzens,
Yeah.
Yeah.
David Carrick, and many, many other monsters were allowed to grow and fester and carry out their wicked criminality.
Yeah.
Mark Rowley, the current Met Police Commissioner, is like, I'm rooting it out, it's all dreadful, it's all terrible.
Yeah.
So we've got Cressida Dick at one end,
Yeah.
and we've got Mark Rowley at the other end.
Yeah.
What actually you need is somebody who's going to sensibly tell it how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got vermin in here,
Yeah.
and we're going to get them out.
Yeah.
We've got great people in here, and we're going to support them. But not say you're going to support them, actually support them.
Yeah.
The Met, unfortunately now, in its kind of effort to purge itself, is turning in on itself.
Yeah.
Officers are not trusting each other.
Yeah.
You know, people are afraid. They're afraid to do the job because they think that their colleagues are going to criticise them or report
Yeah.
them. And who gets shortchanged throughout all of it?
Police.
Us, the
Yeah.
public.
Yeah.
The public. We're the ones that get shortchanged.
We had that police officer recently in the AFO that got arrested for using his firearm.
Yeah. NX1 who once stood trial for murder.
Yeah.
For shooting Chris Cabba.
Yeah, that was it, Chris Cabot.
Yeah.
And he was a known gangster.
Yeah.
He had known firearms. He had not even a 30-second, a 2-second decision. Where are the public in danger? He used his training, and then he got. I know he got found not guilty, but he and his family still had to go through that for 2 years or whatever it was.
When you're
Let me tell you this, and I've said it before, and some people balk at it, but it's the truth. The world is a better place without Chris Cabba in it,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It truly is.
yeah.
yeah.
He was
And
a
people like him.
he was a
Yeah.
piece of garbage,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that police officer did not deserve what he had to go through. But I'm old enough to rattle off other cases where police officers stood
Yeah.
trial for murder or attempted murder or manslaughter and all that kind of stuff. I'm all for police accountability.
Yeah.
It's really, really important.
yeah,
Really important. But the investigations into police misconduct or alleged misconduct must be prompt, professional and independent.
Yeah.
And the Independent Office of Police Conduct is not regarded as being any of those things.
No.
It's held in very, very low esteem and is far from what it should be.
yeah. And talking of independent bodies as well, what's your opinion on the CPS? Because I've worked with some police officers that don't like them. I've worked with some police officers saying it's unnecessarily evil. and a lot of members of the public don't understand the difference. So they always, when you hear people complaining about someone not getting prosecuted or someone getting released early, they blame it all on the police when actually it's
the CPS who make the
So I just wonder
decision.
what
It might be the police's fault if they haven't gathered sufficient evidence.
Yeah.
Then it would be the police officer's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are many vastly inexperienced police officers who don't know how to gather evidence. All they know is, got any CCTV? No. Oh well, we'll close the case. And there is so much more to policing than just gathering CCTV or forensics. But those skills are being lost.
Yeah.
I fear, lost forever.
Yeah.
Okay, and the police has got to really reconnect with elements of gathering evidence that used to apply back in my day. But of course, you are right. The decision to charge rests with the Crown Prosecution Service. But the whole criminal justice system in Britain, let's start at the front line, from policing through to the CPS, through to the courts, through to the prisons, through to probation. It's underfunded,
Yeah.
under-resourced, and not operating like it should do. The criminal justice system in the UK is a disgrace.
That's
But
what I say. Yeah.
Well, interesting enough,
Yeah.
we had a prison officer on not so long back, and basically said exactly the same as you did in reverse.
Yeah.
You know, the prisons are just overcrowded, underfunded. I know we hear it all the time, but when you actually hear it from people on the front line, you know, you kind of resonates home a bit more.
You know,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. This is it, isn't it?
What do you think needs to happen for it to change? For it to get better? Is there any hope? Is there...
With regards to policing, it's not that complicated, but of course, the academics in senior policing and their academic friends at the universities will tell you it's all very complex, very, very complex, very complex, very complex.
They'll probably write a dossier on it.
Oh, it's very complex, is it? Okay. See that shoplifter? Nick 'em.
Yeah.
Right, get the goods back, gather the evidence, charge them. Not that complex. All right.
Yeah.
There are crimes with complexities, of course. Okay, but it ain't that complex. They tell everybody it is because it makes them look bright,
Justifies
intelligent,
their jobs and
clever.
salaries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And basically, most of it is bollocks. As I say, so much of policing can't be found in books, but they've only ever got their heads in books. The College of Policing is a very much discredited organisation that hands down its diktats, its rules, its regulations, its guidance and all that kind of stuff. And it's not just me saying this.
No.
If you go and look at so many of the reports that Andy Cook, who is the Inspector of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services, that Andy Cook says, you know, he just echoes what I've been saying for over 20 years. He's only been in the inspectorate job for a couple of years, I think. But he's literally saying what I've been going on the radio and the television and online for years saying.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, during COVID, I worked with some I was lucky enough to work with some very experienced police officers from PADP, from RATSPA, right the way through. And they've almost verbatim said what you said was the problems with policing. So obviously, it is true, but no one seems to want to have this conversation.
No, because the elites in policing want to maintain the status quo. They promote out of their own image.
Yeah.
They promote people who talk like them, walk like them, look like them and spout the same nonsense.
Yeah.
They don't want dissenting voices
No.
because that's what's kept them in their six-figure salaries
Yeah.
and gets them their King's Police medals and their knighthoods and all that kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
They don't want the status
No.
quo to change.
No.
And they live in communities so clearly detached from the concerns, the worries and the struggles of the shopkeepers,
Yeah.
of people who will wake up tomorrow morning to find that their car's not on the driveway, to people that come home to find that their house or their flat has been burgled, to the women that on public transport are getting harassed at best, murdered at worst, and everything in between.
And from what I've seen as well, and I'll give you an example, there's no respect for police officers. And we were doing a job as a community warden and we stood with PCSOs and they're in uniform and these kids, no older than probably 14, went past on bikes giving them abuse.
Yeah.
And I'm only 32, and I'm thinking, when I was that age, I wouldn't dare, even now, I wouldn't dare say boo to a police officer.
Yeah.
No.
You know, and you think, well, if they're giving abuse to police at 14, what hope have they got? What men are they going to become in society?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
But we got abuse off of 14-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
But in my day, they became adults at 17.
Yeah.
Quite a few people used to get their front doors smashed in on their 17th birthdays once they became adults.
Yeah.
Different rules apply now, son. Let's have a look under your bed. Well, I never. You're nicked. Happy birthday.
Yeah.
No, I know policing was different in those days, but policing needs to get on the front foot.
Yeah.
It really does. Now, if those kids are just disruptive, just about... there is an awful lot of legislation on the statute book that makes an awful lot of things illegal, right?
Yeah.
Being disrespectful to a police officer or a PCSO, of course, is not illegal.
Yeah.
But in all likelihood, if a kid's likely to be, is like that towards a police officer or a PCSO, what else are they up to?
Yeah.
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 Let's have a little look see, shall we?
Yeah.
Anybody know anything about this kid? This gobby little kid off the estate? What's he get up to? When you have links with the community, when you spend time within a community, when you knock on a window, on doors rather, and engage with people, because you can guarantee that if that kid is disrespectful towards PCSOs, police officers, rides around, creates a nuisance, they are going to be a nuisance to lots of other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And lots of other people within the community would be very, very happy to see them brought down a peg or two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you engage with the community, it's astonishing what people tell you.
Yeah.
And it can therefore be very helpful, and it might just help you in establishing enough evidence to prove a crime that gobby little shit has committed.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're nicked.
Yeah.
How gobby are you now? Get in the back of the van, mind your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
I think we need to talk about your TV program, Hunted.
I'm not, I left it years ago.
So I this is how I came to know you. Was I used to love that program.
Yeah.
Right.
Never got on it though. But
No.
Yeah. But no, you obviously left the police force. How long was it before you got into the media, and was it something you fell into, or was it something that you looked for doing and enjoy?
Well, unfortunately, my career in policing was cut short
Yeah.
because an undercover operation that I did was it was a global thing. It was called Operation Zulu Cricket. It was a global thing, and again, one of those operations whereby a consignment of heroin was delivered to me in a hotel room at Gatwick Airport by criminals with proven connections to terrorism and all that kind of stuff. In fact, they'd said if we didn't pay them cash, we could pay them with weapons because they were
Wow.
Cool.
conducting terrorism campaigns and all that stuff. And to cut a very long story short, it was an operation that cut across Ireland, America, Spain, many other countries, many different law enforcement agencies. And when you have multi-agency operations, sometimes there's a lot of infighting amongst the senior officers.
Yeah.
Who's going to have primacy on the case and all that kind of game. Whereas me and the other undercover operative who was from the customs were just getting on and doing the job very successfully, dare I say it. Yeah. Anyway, after that job went down, arrests were made, people went to court, they pretty much worked out that Peter with a ponytail must have been an undercover cop.
Yeah.
And they worked on the theory that if they killed me, they'd kill the evidence.
Right.
Well, to a certain extent, they were kind of right,
Yeah.
you know. But that wasn't a problem because they were never going to be able to find me unless, you know, a colleague had betrayed me or something, and that wasn't going to happen. They wouldn't have been able to find me. Excuse me. Then what happened, and this is where the wheels start to come off, a colleague, a stupid, slack-brained fuckwit of a colleague, had to compile what was called a briefing note for the Deputy Commissioner to take into a meeting with the head of customs or something, and a minister and all that kind of game. Anyway, so he drew up this 7 or 8 page briefing note, and in it, instead of using my undercover number, okay, which is what should have gone in there, the number allocated to me by SO10, the undercover unit at the yard, this clown put my real name in bold capitals repeatedly on just about every page, right? So that's the first mistake. Well, compiling the report is the first mistake. Putting my name in it is the second mistake. Printing it off, taking it out of the police station, police building is what happened next. Putting it in a briefcase, putting it in an unmarked car, which he then went shopping in. Right? You can all guess what comes next, can't you? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, comes back, car's broken into, briefcase stolen, report gone. Right? What a tosser. So thereafter the wheels came off, because now if they could put together the pre-existing plan to kill me with the report, get those two things together, I'd then be very easy to find, because I've got a very unusual surname, and I'd get a bullet in the back of the head. End of. So I was very hurriedly parachuted into the witness protection program, and so began a very miserable 2 years of my life. When I drank too much, smoked too much, conspiracy theorised too much, was still expected to work, undercover.
Really?
Oh, it was all madness. My whole life just imploded. And in the end, I had a catastrophic mental health breakdown. And I was hospitalised in a lock-in psychiatric ward for 3.5 weeks. So I was seriously ill. Very, very chronically ill. And that essentially signalled the end of my police career. Sometime after that, when I'd sort of regained my health and tried to go back to policing, but the stigma and all of that didn't work. Excuse me. So eventually, I got medically retired from the police at the age of 40. I'm on the scrap heap of life. All I've ever known is policing. I've got very little educational qualifications to my name. I've got no trade. I'm not a chippy, a sparks, a plumber, or anything like that. I'm fairly recently married. Got a mortgage. I'm in the shit. I felt very, very unhappy about how I'd been dealt with, about how the whole witness protection thing had come around and all of that. I also felt I had a very interesting story to tell, including 10 years of undercover operations.
Definitely.
So through a friend, I got introduced to a contact in the publishing world. A synopsis that I wrote was just a page, got forwarded to this publisher, and I got home one day to a message on the answer phone saying, "Come in tomorrow.
Oh wow.
We love it." So I went from a world of policing, mental ill health, and being banjaxed out of the police on a ill health pension, into suddenly sitting in a publisher's office, going, "Where do I sign?" And about a year later, my autobiography was published, and that propelled me from a life of secrecy, working undercover, living in witness protection. Suddenly, I'm on the radio, I'm on the telly. I had to make a decision, of course, as to whether to do it in my real name or do it in a pseudonym and all of that. The police tried to block it. I had threats, I had phone calls in the middle of the night.
What, from the police or from
idiots, clearly them, I got summons to a meeting in a pub where a former detective sergeant of mine threatened me and said, "You will not write this book." And I said, "Hang on." I said, "Do you know what? I've just checked my back pockets and I don't have a warrant card, which means I'm not in the police anymore, which means you're not my boss. So you can fuck off." I just got up, walked out the pub. The book was published. The publicity company for the the publisher did a great job. They lined up loads and loads of interviews. One day I was sat in a BBC studio in London, and I was just hooked up for interview after interview after interview to all the regional BBC radios from Scotland, Wales, Newcastle, Cumbria, Surrey, Sussex, Kent. Whole day of countless interviews, and I'd never done any before.
No,
I'd never had any, media training. And I'm a talker. I talked when I was undercover. I talked for a living, and it all went really well. And then I was suddenly finding that a couple of weeks after I've done all these media interviews, and I did telly, suddenly I'm sitting in TV studios going on to talk about my book and all that kind of game. And I enjoyed it. People clearly enjoyed listening to what I had to say, because within weeks, when a serious crime was occurring, they were picking up the phone and ringing me and saying, Peter, will you comment on this crime or this policing story? And
so they were still using you to investigate other crimes?
No, but to discuss crime stories, if there was a policing story and all that kind of stuff. I got on to doing some of that, right? Because my next book that I wrote, I went out and researched unsolved murders. And I still do that. And I'm still doing a lot of work on an unsolved murder of a man called Alistair Wilson, who was shot on his front doorstep in Nairn, in the beautiful Scottish Highlands, just over 20 years ago. I've written the only book on the case, called To Catch a Killer, published in 2018, but I'm still doing lots of work on that case, and I get articles in papers, and I've got lots of sources. I've been going to Nairn for 20 years, so fortunately many people trust me. Anyway, I kind of digress. So, and ever since then, I've been in the media, writing, talking, commenting on crime and policing, and I've been very, very fortunate that I still do it to this day. I've written 4 books, 3 plays, numerous articles, did Hunted, did 4 series of the main show, and 2 celebrity versions.
Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, I did. I worked with some great people. And it was good fun, but we came to the end of the line. You know what I mean? Sometimes I can't work for people that put an entertainment show in front of public safety.
Right, okay.
And that's essentially what happened on one occasion. And things kind of, they were always trying to push it to the next level, and I ended up being the arbiter of good taste. They tried to take the piss out of me. They then did something that I felt was not very good in terms of putting the public at risk. So we just went,
well, I've got a bit of a story about that, actually. So this was a couple of years ago, so long after you left, and I was doing an event in Poole, and we had Blue, the boy band, there. And they were, I think it was Duncan was on one of the Celebrity Hunted, and they hightailed out of there. The Hunted team chased them and then run over one of my colleagues' foot. So I kind
that's the example you just given.
There you go.
Obviously, we don't want to get anyone in trouble, so we'll move on to what you're doing now. And obviously, you haven't given up law enforcement completely, as you alluded to earlier.
I haven't given up investigating.
No,
I'm an investigator to the bottom of me Dr. Martens. So I'm still doing a lot of work on the Alistair Wilson case. I'm still looking for a guy called Kevin Powell. I had a very successful BBC podcast about my hunt for Kevin Powell. Information on that has almost all dried up. But that doesn't mean to say that I'm not doing anything about trying to find him. There are 2 clear and distinct schools of thought. One is that Kevin Powell's dead and I'm wasting my time, and the other is that he's very much alive. Unfortunately, law enforcement won't say it publicly, but they think he's dead, so they won't do anything on it, which is deeply frustrating.
If anyone's got any information, how do they contact you?
I'm so easily contactable. I'm Rent-A-Gob. I'm all over social media. I'm on X. I'm on the Gram. I'm on the old person's Facebook. I'm very easy to find. Very easy to find, and always happy to speak to people, and will travel when necessary to go and meet people confidentially and all of that. So I'm very fortunate. I keep busy. I still do lots of crime and policing commentary and writing articles for papers or websites and that sort of stuff, all as a freelancer.
Yeah.
You know, I've been a self-employed freelancer for 25 years, basically because no one will employ me. But no, I'm very lucky to enjoy the freedoms that brings, but also the perils of thinking, go a day when the phone doesn't ring. I'll never work again, it's all come to an end. And my wife goes, shut up, someone ring tomorrow. And then they do.
Yeah. So you got any plans for this year, or is it more focused on your investigations mainly?
The Alistair Wilson murder has gripped me and fascinated me for 20 years. It's a case that when I first went to Nairn for the BBC in 2005, I thought could and should be solved. And I maintain that to this day. It could and should be solved. The police have behaved appallingly in many regards, Police Scotland. So I keep my size 12s up their rear end. I'm very fortunate to have got some valuable sources because I've been going there for 20 years. People trust me. They know that I'm in it for the long haul. They know that I'm not just a hit and run journalist who's going in there for a smash and grab article of 400 words, never to return again. You know, I'm in there so frequently.
So you build that relationship up. And
with many people, many people. So I'm very fortunate in that regard. I'm still very much in demand, fortunately, for various TV, radio, online kind of broadcasters. So I'll just keep going. As long as the phone keeps ringing, I'll keep working. I just turned 65 last month.
Don't look it.
No, you don't.
No, 75, yes, I know. Thank you. I know that. I'm younger than I look, gentlemen, right? Flattery will get you nowhere. I know the truth. I look in the mirror in the morning, unfortunately. My wife is a few years younger than me. She still works and she loves what she does, so I wouldn't dream of trying to get her to stop. I think I will reassess life when Sarah reassesses her work in life. So if she gets to the point where she goes, you know what, I've had enough of this, then I'll have a look and go, well, maybe I'll stop doing this or I'll stop doing that. But as a freelancer, you've got to remember that if you say no, they're not going to ring you again.
No,
you know, exactly. And I have been very willing, you know, for 25 years. I turn out all times, night and day. You know, they can ring me 24/7. People know that is always on. I pride myself on being punctual, well turned out, well researched, and therefore I know what I'm talking about. And as a result, it seems that people keep inviting me back.
Definitely. So just a quick one to end with. Obviously, you talked about your mental health struggles very candidly. And I read a stat recently where more police officers are killed by suicide than actually in the line of duty. So any sort of younger or any police officers that are out there, or former police officers that are struggling with mental health, would you have any advice to them?
Or anybody struggling
anybody
with mental health. But thank you for aligning it to policing. There's an expression in policing, which in fairness I haven't heard for the last couple of months, but was very prevalent, and that was, welfare is just a poster on the wall. In other words, people felt that, they stick a poster up there like, how are you, you know, speak to someone, blah, 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 rather than being genuinely concerned about the mental health issues of police officers. I think it's vitally important that they are supported. Of course, I think, and I've met, because only a couple of months ago, I was out with frontline cops, Bedfordshire Police, for 3 days. You know, I witnessed firsthand the courage, the brilliance, the professionalism, the compassion, all of that. It was a privilege to watch. But there has to be a sense of understanding that policing is a challenging job. If you are not robust, then perhaps you ought to look for some other kind of job. If you are not able to withstand the rigours of a job. That said, police supervisors should not flog their officers to death. They should understand that they are their most valuable resource. They need protecting from burnout.
Yeah, they do.
They see the most horrendous things. They are subjected to violence.
Yeah.
Like way more unrecognisable, pardon me, than members of the public. They've got to be looked after. They're a valuable asset. They're doing a job that most people would run a mile from. So they need to be looked after. There are charities and organisations, PTSD, 999, Trojan Wellbeing, and other organisations within policing. Please, if a police officer is watching or listening to this and is struggling, reach out to those organisations. Make sure you get some help. Go to your supervisors, explain the situation. But now I'm going to speak very broadly about just mental health. I am not qualified in any way, shape or form to give mental health advice. I'm not a medical practitioner, never have been, but I speak merely from my experience of 2 hospitalisations, because I was hospitalised afterwards after I'd been medically retired as well. And I would say this: talk. Please talk. Talking is great, especially if you've got a really good listening ear to talk to. Whether that be partner, not always appropriate, friend, family member, professional, counsellor, somebody in the medical world.
Even the Samaritans.
Talk. Talk. That does help. There's an old saying, don't hear it much these days. It used to go, a problem shared is a problem halved. It's got an element of truth to it. It really has.
Definitely.
But of course, sometimes that doesn't always work if people are, really seriously ill. Of course. Get medical help. Again, very challenging. We know all about GP's appointments and all that, and waiting lists and all that kind of stuff. Please get medical help. Utilise the help of friends to help you get that. If others to make the phone calls or whatever, and be persistent. Get medical help.
Perfect.
Thirdly, I haven't finished.
Sorry.
That's good.
Finished. Take the meds.
Okay.
Okay. Take the meds. I still, to this day, despite my GP wanting me to have come off this medication years ago, I still take a tiny 1 milligram maintenance dose of medication, like I've had done now for getting on for, I don't know, 15, 20 years, right? Because it works. So why would I stop, right? The dosage has come down over the years, of course, because when I was really ill, it was a high dosage, and now it's just 1 milligram. And my GP says, come on, Peter, let's have a go. Let's have a go at stopping it. And I say, Doc, I'm as happy as I've ever been in my life. It's a tiny maintenance dose. Why would I stop and run the risk of becoming ill again, like I did do many years ago when I stopped the meds? And hey, guess what? I got ill again. I said, why would I run the risk of doing that again? I'm more than happy. I know there's side effects, and I've read the leaflet a zillion times over the years, but it works for me. It keeps me well, keeps me robust, keeps me happy, keeps me working. Why on earth would I run any kind of risk by stopping it? But just to reiterate, that's only what works for me. Other things, other people, and I have no medical qualifications. I merely say what I've said in the last few minutes based on what works for me.
Your own personal
exactly.
experience.
And
I know we've got to wrap it up
Yeah.
rather sooner than later. Just one last thing before we do wrap it up. From all the years that you were undercover, do you reckon being undercover and playing someone who you're not has caused the mental health? Because it's almost like acting, isn't it, in a way?
It was acting.
Putting on the front.
It was acting.
Yeah.
Every inch of it was acting.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. Wasn't like acting.
No.
It was acting.
Yeah.
The problems for me were caused by overwhelmingly being forced into witness protection. Because I had to leave my home, leave my identity, leave my neighbourhood, and got parachuted into a place that I didn't like, was a long way from home, and I had all those pressures.
Yeah.
Also,
the
you
additional
probably felt
pressures.
let down as well, let down by that colleague, and probably let down by the wider force.
Yeah.
I did, and I was conspiracy theorising because I was all like,
Yeah.
how did it get to this? How did it get to this? Oh, I know what I'll do.
Yeah,
I'll open another bottle,
yeah,
Yeah.
but not water.
Yeah.
I drank too much. I played a part in my own downfall.
Yeah.
Fully accept that.
Yeah.
Drank too much, smoked too much, conspiracy theorised too much. Not my fault, that section of it.
No.
But it was inevitable that it was always going to be a bit of a car crash.
yeah.
I think, but they hadn't thought it through.
No.
They hadn't been presented with that set of circumstances before.
Yeah.
It was unique to them. They didn't really think it through. I didn't. I was just swept along with it all. But fortunately, it was a long time ago. I've been well for many, many years.
Yeah, it's good.
I have a wonderful
Yeah.
family, indeed. Great kids. The most amazing wife on earth. And the phone rings and I keep in work. So I'm very fortunate. And then from time to
great.
time, lovely people like you
No,
invite
appreciate
me down to
it.
chat. So thank you.
No,
No problem. It's
we've
been a
really enjoyed
pleasure.
it. It has been a pleasure, and you know, to meet someone
Of your calibre.
your calibre and what you've succeeded is, you know, it's definitely an eye opener.
You're very
Stories.
kind, but there is, of course, no substitution for hard work.
No,
No, that's true.
no, that's
It's
true.
been a pleasure.
Gentlemen,
been a pleasure. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for having me.
Yeah.